I appreciate everybody joining. I know it's a Friday before a long weekend, and we're going to talk about real super interesting stuff. So I really appreciate everybody joining. I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to try to reach out to every one of you individually and try to get some feedback. So Jenny was going to start with a quick little intro, and then we're going to jump in and demo the system for you. Okay, and then we shouldn't go to, I allocated 2 hours. We're really shooting for between an hour and an hour and a half. So hopefully your weekend can start. All right, thanks everyone. Jenny, you want to start?
Yes, thank you. Hi. First, we want to thank you for attending today. And I'm just going to briefly do a little bit of housekeeping, but I do have to start with the fact that it's 80 degrees here in Myrtle Beach today. So you can be envious if you want. The little housekeeping is, if you're new to Google Hangouts, then up at the top you'll notice a little bar, and in the upper left button there you can hide participants. That'll give you a little more real estate when you start to see the demos. There's a mute button right next to that you can toggle off and on. And over to the right, if you're seeing it, you can close out the group chat. We won't be using that today, and again, it'll allow you to have a little bit more real estate. And then, since you already know us and each other, and because we have a lot to cover, we're going to bypass individual introductions today. As you probably know, Penn Assurance was founded in 2012 with a team of experienced insurance industry experts. With that expertise and advances in technology, our cloud-based system called LifeOps was developed from the ground up. The demos and the topical discussions that we'll be covering today will highlight LifeOps differentiators along with system and architectural features that we're hoping will showcase why we believe LifeOps is a superior solution to current systems you may already be familiar with. Where we usually would lay some groundwork with a review of our architecture, utilities, tools, we decided to demo our actual features first, or some of our actual features first, and use them to illustrate some of that architecture, utilities, and tools. Our agenda then includes demos of new business and policy issue, our test and DUX, DevOps, and some discussion on architecture, a little bit of discussion on our recap, discussion on roadmap, and then just open interactive discussion. Just one last note, please feel free to ask questions. However, because we do have a lot to cover, we may ask to hold some of those questions in our parking lot and come back to them a little later on. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Pam and Paul to start the new business policy issue demo.
Okay. Jenny, thanks. So we're not going to be on a lot of slides. I'm going to try to get through this slide real quick. We're going to show you entering, we want to go into the new business system, what we call the UX, the user experience, and that user would be the customer service rep. So Pam's going to type in a suspense record. She's going to tie that suspense to a new business app. She's going to key in that, whoops, your screen. I've just noticed that I'm sharing my screen, but you're not seeing, it's still on the agenda. What am I? Sorry about that.
Just go out for a moment and
will you
do it again? I just don't think you hit the full sharing. Just go back to your browser. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I wasn't sharing my whole screen. So just reboot here. Sorry. So Pam's going to enter suspense. She's going to type that in the new business system. The UX, we call it the user experience, and that's for a customer service rep. We're going to type in a new business app. We're going to use that suspense number we entered. We're going to try to issue the policy. Is the policy in good order? We're going to walk through user validations, edits, requirements. And then we're going to try to emphasize that everything you're seeing that when Pam enters this data is accessible through services. The services are already built, they're RESTful, they're very lightweight, and they can enter it, they can be automated, so you can enter all your suspense through those services. You don't have to use the screen that Pam's going to be keying in. And then we're going to introduce this LifeOps bot and kind of show you how we feel it's a differentiator and a very unique item, an interactive bot that can help you with questions and can address a lot of different users, like an agent portal or an owner portal, policy owner portal. We're going to finish up with a little post-issue, real basic, just going to free look the policy just to show you after issue an operation, and we call them user events or transactions. And then we're going to export it, what Pam had typed in as a test case. So Pam's going to share her screen, and we're going to look at all these items.
I feel like that's a lot of pressure now, Paul.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
So in a moment, you should be able to see our LifeOps screen.
Right, I'm testing. I don't see it yet.
That's all right. I'm just making everyone anticipate.
Okay. Then you see it. I see it. Okay.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Pam, and it is a pleasure to speak with all of you, even more so to show you our LifeOps front-end system, which is my role today. I'm going to log right in, and what we have focused on first as a company is annuities, both indexed and fixed. What I want to put through and show today is a very basic cash with app fixed annuity. We're going to keep it real simple just so you can get the layout of what the system looks like. You're going to see right from the beginning, we've got the bells and whistles that we're all starting to get familiar with, the system date, who's logged in. We're left menu driven over here. And I'm going to start by creating a suspense number. We've got currency and date masking. Paul's lowering the table for me. I think that's supposed to make me laugh.
That's a short joke.
That's a short joke. Lost if I don't put the webcam on. But... Okay, and I'm just going to enter minimal information in here. And it's automatically generating a suspense number, in this case number 9. It's keeping a record of who created this, when they created, the details behind it. It would continue to keep records of any updates or modifications done to the record. Okay. And with that, we're going to get right into new business. I'm going to leave everything current dated. Like I said, this is going to be a very simple case. I'm going to choose California for its superior state prowess. And having chosen the state and the date, now it's driving what plans are available to me, right? So it knows when things were approved and where they were approved. I'm going to stick with our Acme 2016 plan to give me a good fixed annuity. And now it's going to render the screen so that I have all the input necessary to grab from the app. As Paul already articulated, we know that most of this is coming in through services these days, and that the system is primed for that. But we also know that you've got to have the ability to enter some of these. And when I tie this into some of the testing later, you'll see how handy it is. So I'm going to enter in a few things, mostly to show you some of the masking.
Very Irish name.
Very. I can imagine this person's childhood. Okay. Now we have done everything we can to make the experience for the user easy. Anything that you shouldn't have to type twice, you don't. Anything that you can do with one click, we do. One of the things I want to show you is the first type of edit that we offer, which is an online edit. I'm going to be saving a draft. That's also key in the point, whether we're in transactions or entering new business or modifying. We can always save a draft of what we're doing and come back to it later. We don't tie up a policy number until submit, but we do keep application numbers. There's an online edit. It's simply telling me my email isn't formatted correctly. And since I've toggled the primary owner being the same as the owner, or the primary annuitant being the same as the owner, you can see that it's populated that information for me. I'm going to add a beneficiary. We have the ability to do multiple people and businesses, split them evenly by percent, all of those. In this case, everything's going to the aunt. I'll add the record. You're going to see a few menu items over here that I'm not going to go into. They're either things that we're still building out, or they just don't apply to this fixed annuity. But we are working on reoccurring payments and some more sophisticated death processing with payees. In this case, I'm going to skip to the investment. Because of the plan that I chose, it's now going to let me know the increments that I can select. And here's where I'm going to tell it my qualified status. That's going to drive a lot of the edits and a lot of the information that is collected. I'm going to put this on as cash with app, but you will see exchange transfers in there as well. We've built out functionality for 1035 exchanges in particular so that we can collect multiple, send stuff to other companies, and gather all of those. Eight. This is the real test. Do you remember what I ordered?
It was 9.
It was 9. Paul says.
It's like that Beatles song.
All right, and it was 9. It's going to let me select and attach the suspense record. It's going to default because it already knows it came in its cache. That's how I keyed it in from the lockbox.
And you could have searched if you knew if the policy number was on the suspense, you could have searched on that, or the social, any of that provided.
I could look it up by dollar amount if I wanted.
We're so good late Friday afternoon to search on suspense numbers.
We're that good. So what I'm ready to do now is to go ahead and submit this application so I can show you another edit and then the issue process itself. So what it's done is it's taken me to the overview screen. It's allowing me to review everything I've entered. And you can see the status right now is a business error, and I have an error tab to tell me what exactly is going on. I keyed in something below the threshold that's built in for this plan. So it's a 50,000 minimum, and I was short. So
right, and that's a rule inside the plan. Our plans are very configurable. You could have state overrides where each state could have a different minimal amount.
I'm going to correct it. I'm going to update it and resubmit it. Now, the history of everything I've done so far, from creating the suspense record to the validations that I've received, the error that I've now corrected, that's all being saved and is going to be contained in the test case I'm about to show you in a few minutes. We're going to go ahead and issue this. Okay. Gone active, all my errors had cleared, and now we've got a list of calculations. We kept this non-qualified, but we are doing RMD calculations. In this case, with this plan, we've got surrender charges, and we have a bonus on this plan as well, a flat $750. Okay. So at this point, one of the things I want to show you is one of our favorite features, which is the bot that Paul referred to. About bot. As we've said, everything, all of our data is exposed and easily available as to be gathered or input as a web service. The bot is another mechanism to interact with that. So we see the bot as a type of portal. In this case, I'm showing it to you in a customer service setting. But you can think of this also as the conduit for the agents to check on their commissions or the status of their policies. It could be customer or actual owners calling in to make beneficiary changes or something that was allowed through the portal. All of it's hitting the same data, all of it's calling the same web services. In this case, let's ask for surrender value. I'm going to keep it on the policy that I'm on, but I have the ability to use the bot to call for other policies too. And you can see it's returning the surrender value for me. Another one we've just started working with, still called test, is it's going to tell me any transactions that have been processed on this. And in this case, it's just an issue.
Where that could be a link to take you somewhere else, or there could be mouse over information, just to show you the potential.
Yep. Okay. And with that, what we're going to do now is close out this policy just so we can show the money coming in, it being processed, and this being closed down. It turned out they were going to free look this one.
Yeah, I was creating the scenario where this is a little old lady, or man in this case, and she called the insurance company the day it issued and screamed. Said, the agent took advantage of me. And you said, no problem,
Exactly
we're
right.
still in the free look period.
We're still in the free look. We're going to waive all charges, and we're going to get the money right back to you. We are going to claw back that bonus, however, which I'm sure she would be pleased with. One other thing to note is that we use a quoting system, so any of our transactions can be run first as a quote, and they can be run several times as a quote until you've reached the scenario you want. So when we're playing around with partial withdrawals, those types of transactions, having that quote ability is fabulous, and it will run edits and everything else as well. In this case, we're doing a standard free look, so we're going to submit this.
Everything you're seeing, quoting, valuation quotes or quotes of transactions, it's all accessible through these services, and that's how these screens are working, and that's how the bot is working. It's calling those same services.
And keeping a record of all this information, who processed it, what they did. I'm now going to apply it, and my policy's gone to a free look status. The disbursement's been created. Dr. Aloysius will be receiving his check shortly. Okay. One thing worth noting, we now should see more transactions, and we do. We see that this has also been free looked, so it's accessing the data appropriately. Now,
can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we do we'll just show and export? That might be a good transition to the DUX.
That's perfect. So my next to the bot, maybe tied, I'm not sure. The thing I love the most about this is the way testing is tied in at the core of the system. So everything I just put in, if I'm in a development or a QA environment and I now hit a bug, or we had hit a system error, or a validation that I don't think should be there, what we've all encountered in the past is now I got to bring a developer over to look at my screen. Or worse yet, I've got to go key it in somewhere else as identical as possible so that I can recreate the error, which will never happen once I have to recreate it somewhere else. Within this system, we have the ability to export these test cases at any given time, before it's issued, when it's just an application, after it's got 10 years of history on it. With the proper security, you can pull this down from production. You've got something going on, you need someone to take a look at it. This export functionality is going to package up all the XML associated with it. And again, that's everything from suspense, and an agent lookup, applying money, going through validations. It's going to package it and make it available in file format so that it can be absorbed into any area that we need it to. And Paul's going to demonstrate all of that. What we call our developer user experience, our DUX, is where we typically import these files into. But the ability to do that has made our development here internally remarkably faster and more efficient. The other great thing is I can mark this test case, or this case, as a test policy, saying I actually want this to be run now all the time, anytime a deployment or anytime the code is built again, run it against my free look policy and make sure nothing's broken. And that artifact exists, it'll run every time there's a build. All right, and with that, Paul, I'll turn it back over to you. Okay. I'm exporting my test case.
Yeah, so the export's going to download the file, put it onto her computer. So I'm going to switch over, I'm going to take
You're going to take control. I will stop. Present, you got to go back to present to everyone. That's what I did wrong. Right there.
Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, so I want to show you the DUX. We just saw what we call the UX, the user experience. And when we say user, when I'm saying user, I mean the customer service rep. And that's somebody entering new business. It might be an underwriter, somebody with a policy issue in that group as a customer service rep. And I'll be addressing that as the new business system. So now we're going to talk about really how do you manage these plans, how do you manage these test cases, and that's what we call the DUX, and who would use that. So let me screen. So, and what are these test cases? We talked a little bit about it. I just want to make sure you understand. So what We're going to introduce these concepts of a test case and a test suite, and they're really reusable artifacts. They're going to be a single XML document that contains all the input for the new business system. So everything Pam entered is going to be contained in this XML document, what we call a test case. It's going to have all the user transactions and events, what we would call, in this case, it would be an issue, and a free look would be the user event, and they would be captured. Pam has gone over this. I just think it's really important to understand. And then the expected results. We haven't talked about that, but with this audience, you probably know what that means. So you can then go in and define expected results for anything and everything, for quotes and for actual values and for input.
Dates, ages,
yep.
And that will persist with that test case. It'll stay there with that expected result.
Right, and I just try to give like a brief summary. Like you might want to work with an actuary. They might say, I'm expecting a certain cash value on 1/1/2018. The actuary would then define that expected result in the XML, or they'd work with a BA, and that BA would put it into the test case. And then then it would run, the actual results would match. You would run against the expected results, and if there's a match, it would report it. If they differed, you'd see that in the report. And we're going to look at that in just a few minutes. And then there's also cycle up directives. So what that means is these are test cases. They're annuity contracts that could be 10, 20, more than 30 years old. So how long do you want to run it for? Do you want to run this contract for 20 years? When, as a test case, you can give it those kind of directives. Or you can say to stop on the year 2000, whatever like that. They're parameters within the test case. You don't need to do that, but they're in there if you want to use it. So what are the users? Who's going to run these test cases? We really, the QA role is going to own it, but we really want a wide audience, and a wide audience should use it. Subject matter experts, BAs, when they're developing a new feature, they're developing the requirements. We want them to develop the test case at that same time and have expected results. So when it's transferred to a developer, they can communicate with the test case to say, hey, this is what I want for input. This is what the actual values are. Maybe the SME is, the SME is going to have to work with actuary to get those actual values, but that's going to be the part of the collaborative process here. So then the developer is going to be able to run the test case, and they can sign off on their work when all the expected results match. That should be the definition of done. Actuaries may want to add expected results, and they may update these test cases or run them. You could have different roles or different responsibilities in this process. So why is it so important? We know it'll ensure the quality for all deployments. So you don't have to second guess anything. You know that all your expected results have matched when you do the deployment or before you do the deployment. And we feel it can be a communication tool and define when a task is done. You should be able to identify, reproduce, and solve problems faster, because when you have an error, you just export it as a test case and then transfer that to the developer. They import it into their environment, and they can either reproduce it or realize it's something to do with the environment. And then they'll bring down that version of the code.
And this form of communication, just speaking empirically for what we're doing here in our shop, it's invaluable, right? If everyone's working remotely and we've got something and we're not all in the same room to look at it together, the fact that we can all share this file makes it incredible.
Yeah, definitely. So I was going to go into the environment and show the DUX. I think you did the Sandbox too, right?
I did.
So I'm going to go into the DUX, or as we call API here. I'm going to click on that. It's going to prompt me to log in. My information's already there. I'm going to log in. So this is the DUX version. This is the first time we've seen this, and it's really looking at the same data that Pam did, but that was really the new business experience. And this is the developer or actuary or QA experience. So first thing you're going to see is there's a lot of menu options along the top. So environment, test cases, because we have a lot of different users that would use this. So we're going to imagine we're the QA person. We're going to consume a test case. So we're going to go to the test case option, the second menu option, and then first thing you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of information. So I'm going to make it a little larger just so everyone can see it, and then try to walk you through what this information is telling you. So this is the first time we've seen a test case in the DUX. and they're going to show up as this beaker icon. So you have a mixture of the beaker icon. So these are all test cases, and then you have the film icon. The film icon is a test suite, and what we found is we needed a way to organize one or more test cases, because you have so many artifacts. This is just a folder or a way to organize, and we call them test suites. You can give it any name you want, and you can then put one or more test cases in it, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. So the other thing you should notice is that you then have these labels, what we call labels, and in this user schedule, let me try to make it a little bit larger. User schedule test suite, we have two labels defined. That's configurable, and somebody went in and said, hey, user schedule's not clear enough. I want to be able to make sure people know these are transaction user schedules, and I'm really trying to demonstrate partial withdrawals. So that way, it should be very self-explanatory to everyone. And you can also do that to a test case. So in a test case, you can create those labels and attach them there. Okay, so one other thing I wanted to show you here is that scheme, and there's on the left and on the right. And on the right is really your dashboard of the last time all these test cases ran. So what it's telling you is that these black items have never processed as test cases. So they're loaded into the system, but not executed. You can't query them. They don't really exist. You have the potential to run them, but they're just here idle. The red folder, that should raise a red flag where you have a test case and it caused a call stack. So you would never want to deploy code if you see a test case or a test suite that's red. There'd be no, you'd need to resolve that call stack problem before you deploy. And then you have green. Green means that you've defined expected results and that all the expected results have matched. So that's what you would expect, all items to be green, or black if you're not scheduled to run them all. And on the right side, it's really your dashboard, and it's telling you the same information but aggregated. So you can see all the ones that succeeded or failed or had business rule errors. And here you can quickly go to the ones that have system errors in this middle section here under system error. You can find all of them. Like I know the one with the system error is in this annuity basic folder. But before we drill into that and take a look at this test case, I just want to show that there's one more item that's trying to give you additional information. So there's a red circle, which is basically telling you that there was where Pam had entered $40,000 and the product really required $50,000. So those kind of events, user edits, are going to show up as that. So they could be and should be legitimate things you are testing, and you would want to see that in your test cases. Yep. So let's drill into, so this is the first time we're going to drill into an actual test suite. And all we know at this point is the test suite is a way to organize one or more test cases. So I'm drilling into it. As we can see, there's 6 test cases inside this test suite. And then in this dashboard, we can see a little basic information. We can see the test cases that are in this test suite. We can see that most of them succeeded. One had a call stack, which was this annuity 003. And then you can see the use of these additional labels. And just some overview information on the test suite to the right here, test summary. So let's drill into the test case. We've been talking about it for 5 minutes. Let's actually see it. Hopefully it's worth the wait. So now we're looking at this test case, and at this point we can rerun the test case. We can reset it, which is going to undo everything, and then run it again. I'll do that at the end, and we can see how, what ended up, what transaction. So this is going to be the list of user transactions. There have and system transactions, where anniversary is a system transaction. You don't have to enter that, but an issue transaction, you would expect user input. And then to the right, you get a summary. So you have a link to the actual policy in the policy admin system. So if you click this link, we'd go over there. If you want to just look at the new business app, you can go in through there, through this link with the application number. And then expected results, which we talked about, but here you can see there's someone went in here, defined expected results. I already know that because it's green, and and we know they matched. But here's the detail. They have expected results on issue, on anniversary, and on valuation. The valuation you can do at any time. It's really a quote, but a lot of times you want to find out what the cash values are at certain points in time, and you can kind of inject a valuation, which will force you to do can allow you to do expected results on the evaluation. So here, just to touch on it, they went in and defined these target values, and when the system actually ran, you have the expected, or the actual values are going to match, and in this case they matched the target values, so that's why it's green. All right, just to show the XML real quick. So Pam had exported it. It's an XML document. So if we look over here in the configuration, we should be able to see the XML. That is the test case. So it's very readable. It's very consolidated. So if you wanted to copy and paste this, it would be very easy to do. It's just XML. You copy it, give it a new name, and you could have a new test case. There's a lot of ways to consume or to add additional test cases.
And that's added a lot of value when we're doing our testing, because we can make small modifications. You know, there's a million times we've said, hey, we want to run a test case, but we need to change the age a couple times, or we need to change the state a couple times. It's so easy to do this way.
Right. And I'm not going to show the XML, but we can see just from not all of it, just from the top, that you have defined in this metadata some tags. And these tags, the deferred annuity then refers to these labels that I've been talking about, and valuation then here. So this is all very customizable, and you can easily add or remove these tags.
And hi, this is Ginny. So just to add a little lore story to this, and since we're with friends, I'll actually name the client, but if you'll recall from our Admin Oracle days when we had Fidelity as a client, we had a whole group of people that were doing nothing but entering 6 or 7 test cases that went over a period of 20 years, and they were put together by the actuaries from Fidelity on a spreadsheet, and people spent days putting them in, and then looking at expected results, and going back and putting them in again the next time the system was cleaned out. So if you can imagine the power of this solution versus that solution, and having to manually rebuild those test cases over and over again to do some regression testing, I think you can see how valuable it really would be.
Yep. Thanks, Jenny. And just real quick, just to transition, Pam had finished with exporting a test case, so I'm going to import it just to show you how we would do that. But the one feature I didn't, and this kind of touches with the plan definition, is this is the scope of a test case. We're looking at one specific test case, annuity 001, in the DUX. So it's going to try to give you different views. I tried to show the tree view here on the right. Just, the XML is going to tell you the entire story, but here you can kind of get an overview quickly. But then the plan definition, every policy, in the beginning, Pam chose annuity 2016, I think it was. So every policy's mapped to a plan, and then that plan's going to have these validations to say you need minimally $50,000. So this, we wanted all this information at your fingertips. So at the plan definition, it's not the actual plan for you a link to all the information. So if you're finding a problem, you can quickly go here and look at the plan and see, oh, maybe the state that's not approved in that state, or that block's closed and that's why I can't issue, or oh shoot, somebody added a New York override and made it $1 million for the minimum premium. Okay, so once again, there's a lot of options here. There's a lot to the DUX. We're trying to focus as a QA person. So the other thing I can see a QA person doing is this Sandbox link. So here, we're going to try to consume the test case as XML, paste it in here, and basically this is a place to play to make sure you're working with this test case. Maybe it's not valid. Here you can test it. It only runs in memory. So before you're ready to commit it or save it, you could use it here and develop it and work through expected results and test it all in memory. You can actually prototype plans in the same sandbox, but we're only going to look at test cases at this point. So I have the XML. I'm going to copy and paste it. And I'm going to actually play the test case. We have two options where once we're comfortable with it, this is just going to be in memory. We can actually persist it and save it, and that would be this run, test, and persist option.
And that's one of the ways I can do test cases, put in some expected results, make sure everything's working the way I expect it to, and then I commit it to the database. Once I've done that, it stays there, and I can run it because I've marked it as a test case. It stays there, and with every build, it'll get run.
Yep. And this is a replay of everything Pam did. So Pam entered using the new business app. We captured it as XML, and now it can live as a test case. So you might notice there was a business rule error, and at that point when she tried to submit, and if we look at it, we can actually see what that business rule error was. And it was that it was under the threshold of $50,000. Then she basically made repaired the policy, went in, changed it to $50,000, which are these events, and then we tried to issue again, and at this time it was submitted. There was no validation error, and then she issued the policy, and then she eventually pre-looked it. So now, just trying to connect all, what a test case and what Pam did. So I know it was a lot of information. So I'm going to move off of the DUX now. Jenny, anything you think that's good, or?
I do think that's good, and hopefully that gives you some ideas of different workflows and different things that you can do with using this. It's pretty powerful.
All right, so I'm looking at some of my talking points to make sure I think I've hit them all. So and this was talking about the colors, and that's where the one thing we didn't talk about was yellow. So that was one where your expected results didn't match. So that wasn't red, green, and we didn't have one there, but that shows up yellow. So then you can quickly go to a case where your expected results are not matching. And you wouldn't want to promote something in that case, I think, ever when it's red or yellow. So now we're going to move off of the DUX and talk about how we deploy to the cloud. So for now, we're going to use an interface to deploy a new environment for everyone. I'm going to just kind of jump in and show you that. So I'm going to use this command line interface, which is integrated with Slack, which Slack is just a communication collaborative tool that we use, but you could, the same commands I'm using, I'm going to type to deploy a new environment to the cloud, what we call DevOps. You could use at a command line, you could use in DOS, command, terminal session, you could batch or write into script files. And we have that ability. You could make it a web service. Right now, we're accessing it, or the way I'm going to show you is through Slack. So what's going to happen when I try to create an environment? It's going to go through a bunch of processes. I figured let's just try it, and you'll hopefully I'll talk to you while it's processing. So here, this is Slack. I'm going to do just a simple interactive command to the bot. So this is the LifeOps bot. I'm going to ask it to do a command line interface command, and I'm going to say list all the sites on Amazon. We're using Amazon Web Services. So this command, the bot's going to then communicate with Amazon Web Services and query all the sites we have and come back. I'm going to kind of go over this output with you in a second. What I want to do is kick off a new environment because that's going to take 5 minutes. So I thought at that point we'd have talking points, and then we can come back and hopefully the environment's deployed. So all I'm doing here is copying a command. It's and then I'll walk you through what I'm doing.
You didn't want the pressure of typing.
You know
how many times I've done
it's so easy to,
So easy.
All right. So I'm going to call it demo 4 because I'm so creative. Yeah, we're up to 4. So here I'm going to ask LifeOps bots to create a cloud environment. So what's going on here? At this point, it's going to Amazon. It's going to procure the hardware, the virtual hardware. It's going to deploy the database. It's going to deploy the latest code. For this command, I'm asking for the latest code, but it could be any branch or any version of the code. But with this command, I'm asking to deploy the latest code. It's going to deploy a database, an application server, and then it's going to come back and run, when it's done, it's going to give me URLs so I can access the application. So that's what's going on now, and that takes about 5 minutes. And what we think that really should open the door, where if an actuary needs an environment to test something and they only need it for an hour or a couple of days, before you try to make them use dev and kind of whoever's using dev, they step on each other's toes. That's not needed anymore. You can still do that model, and this model is still supported, but you should be able to start thinking differently and deploying differently. And this still can be in the hands of a DevOps person, but we really think it should empower more people to do this, or at least to limit maybe one person in QA or more people in development. Definitely should be able to do this to help people, to move quicker and to bring up products quicker.
Yeah, I would say too, just to add to that a lot of what I've seen is, especially like the actuarial department product development, with their trying to get speed to market and the developing of new products. So you could imagine almost giving them an environment between that and test cases. They certainly could do a lot of work with either cloning a product that they already have and adding the tweaks to it, being able to test it, having their own environment to do that without having to go through a ton of approvals and all that sort of thing. So again, another way of working that just comes to mind.
Right, just procuring the hardware and getting WebSphere to work properly can take much longer than people expect. And now a lot of organizations don't even have access to their own hardware. In a sense, they have to work with a group that they've contracted just to reboot an app, which can take a day. Where it's just you eliminate all of that with tools like this.
Yep, and we've had a lot of calls from clients asking us to help them get cloud ready, right? Everyone seems to be moving towards the model now that at least part of what they're doing has got to be available in the cloud. And this sounds a little familiar from back in the admin server days, but to have this technology available when we were starting the development has been very empowering. So ours was built to accommodate the cloud.
Yep, and I'm going to try to make this a little bit larger. I don't know if it's helping.
That's fine.
Yeah. So just, these commands, this one we're doing a create environment, but it takes a decent amount of parameters, but it's very powerful. A lot can work by default, but here you can say what branch of code you want, what version, what types of users. If you have your different users you want, you can integrate, and that's part of these commands, and then you can give it a name. And then also, just to show you, the first command was the list, which then went to Amazon Web Services and queried all the environments. So we have 3 different regions. We have the LifeOps region, which is just for demos, Acme region, which has demos, and then each of these is the deployment. So there's a demo environment in Acme. There's a Sandbox 2 inside of Acme, and we use that for demos. So they could represent different builds or time slices of the build. We have another region called Man Life. So Man Life would represent a client where you'd have different plans and different products in Man Life, and then in the dev, you could go into there and see those plans, and you might have different sets of users for that region too. So it's I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology, so I'm going to go back to the slides. And I'm looking at this just to see if I've missed a couple of things. So the one thing I wanted to say is the one technology we're using here is with Amazon, we're deploying the application in a Docker container. So Docker is an open source container technology. We would highly recommend, if you're using LifeOps, to use that technology, because all these utilities are going to be based around that. And then also, if you're using a container technology like Docker, you can then deploy to any web provider, DigitalOcean or to IBM, to Oracle, to Microsoft, because they're all designed to consume these containers. Okay. All right. So technology. It's a Java application. It's using all open source technology. We're not open source, but all the technology we're using is open source. It's a relational database behind the scenes. We're using PostgreSQL. Would we customize it to do another database? Yes, we would try to encourage to kind of stay with this platform, but we know that certain demands we may have to go to MS SQL or MySQL or Oracle. OSGI is a technology we're using, or a framework, which really allows bundling and packages of the jars, so you can extend the code in a very where you can just deploy one piece, and you don't have to deploy the whole code base. And that's what one of the things OSGI gives you. We're heavily relying on like a continuous integration environment, where we're building it every time, but every time a code's committed, we're using GitHub as our code repository. Our SDLC spawned the Git flow model, which there's many white papers around that subject. And then the Docker's the other thing I just wanted to call out there. So I think Pam had told me the site had come back. So it looks like our command to create the environment came back, and we now have a demo for it. So we have an API or a DUX version, and then we have a UX version or web version. So I'll go into, and now because this region I've never logged in before, it doesn't know me, so I'm gonna, hopefully I remember my password. And here's the DUX again. And if we go to the test cases, there's different modes, but in this, the way I deployed it, the test cases won't run automatically. We do have a switch where when you deploy, the test cases would run automatically. So here they're going to come up all as black.
Okay. And then at that point you can run your test suite, go through all your regression testing, make sure everything is set.
Let me grabbing the document I just closed.
Oh, right here. I got you.
So I think we're really at a recap level. So I think material, I think at a good pace.
Certainly a lot of it. Yeah.
So, the main point, we were trying to show you is these three pillars: the DUX, the UX, the X being experience. So the different experiences people can see, the different technologies. We're using React for the UX. The customer service rep would use that experience. The DUX, we can see a developer spending a lot of time in that environment and enhancing how quickly they can build and deploy, and hopefully working with subject matter experts and BAs in that environment. The other one that we just showed you is really the Commandline Tool, which just lets you deploy and query. There's more commands involved there. You can bring down environments, bring them up. You can bring down logs. But we just wanted to show you how quickly, and it took about 5 minutes to deploy a new environment. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're willing to make that environment available to our call participants if there's interest in logging in?
Yeah, I've done this before, and we've done it before. So I could create a custom environment for each one of you that you could use. You're free to use or not use it. We'd probably leave it up for a couple weeks. If you wanted it longer, just let me know, and we could have it. And you could enter policies if you wanted, or take a look at it. But it would be the build that we demoed today. The one thing we'd have to do is add a user for you.
Right.
And then the other, the concept that sometimes I emphasize enough, but everything Pam did using the UX can be replicated through the services are available, and that the UX is using those services, and everything, the DUX, same thing, the bots are all services available. So I'm just, sorry, clicking through the slides, making sure I've covered everything. The one thing we didn't go into is the plans into a lot of detail. We just didn't think there was enough time, but the plans are very similar to a test case. They're very consolidated XML. You can override any rate out of state. To me, they're easy to manage. They're consolidated. You can copy and paste it. At companies I've been at, the plan copy was always like something only one person knew how to do, or the utility would get broken constantly. Here, you just copy and paste this. You export the plan like you export a test case as an XML document, and you copy it, and you have a brand new plan. We just emphasized the cloud-based technology, and how we think that, that it opened new doors for us, and we feel it'll open new doors for everyone. How you work, and you may just have environments for a small team of people, and maybe you have a dev environment for each person. And at least you can do that now.
Yeah, the other thing I think that it allows you to do with the things that we've seen today is sort of that life cycle that starts with maybe a business analyst or somebody from actuarial kind of defining the requirements that you need. You can see how if you kind of use this tool set between test cases and environments, you can really work collaboratively, and you can kind of go back and forth with almost prototyping, I guess, through development with a test case, and then refining it and using that to continue the development of a feature.
So, the last thing we wanted to kind of touch on, we'll make it interactive if people want to in a few minutes, but roadmap-wise, we see this year we really want to launch and become our own entity for policy admin. And what does that mean? Marketing, one or more shows possibly. We're focused on life. We're not focused on life at this point. We don't want to be pulled in that direction. We're not. That conversation can be. We'd be willing to have, but we'd like to focus on fixed and deferred annuities, and in indexed index. So in the deferred phase, would we do payout? Probably we're there. We have the pieces in place. So we want to build out the additional business functionality. We can demo everything we demonstrated today. We could demonstrate with an indexed annuity, which we just didn't think we had time to demonstrate today. So I think we're probably open to. I think,
if there is any conversations, like Paul mentioned before, he is going to be contacting everyone individually to have some one-on-one time, and we really appreciate feedback, not only on the demonstration, but on what you're seeing on the system so far, and kind of what our roadmap looks like. Advice from the experts is very much appreciated. Are there any questions or comments that anyone would like to make at this point? It seems like it's very close to cocktail hour on a holiday weekend now. We really appreciate everyone's time. It might be the most silent wrap-up of a demo ever, so somebody's going to have to at least say something before we go, just so we know someone was there.
80 degrees here.
80 degrees, Jenny. Crazy.
Do you want to look on the chat just to see if anyone's... Yeah. Okay.
All right. Great, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.